Human health and animal health are bounded to ecosystem health.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in it together. And so as I started my work at the University of Rochester and Seneca Park Zoo, I was realizing more and more of those connections. And I decided, I believe I want to get a degree in public health. So again, it's like bridging between physicians and veterinarians. And so I earned a master's degree in public health in 1995. I had amazing support. I was the first veterinarian to ever go through the program. So I got my degree in public health, and then onward I went, really bridging more what I would consider gaps between human medicine and veterinary medicine.
Hi, welcome to another episode of The Next Step. I'm Jeff Koslofsky, Senior Marketing Strategist here at SMD. Excited for this conversation with Jeff Wyatt. He is a Master's of Public Health graduate from 1995, turned veterinarian, has spent 40 plus years here at the university and also at the Seneca Park Zoo. He's done work all over the world. Such a great conversation about the connections between animal health, human health, and our ecosystem health. I can't wait for you to hear about his career journey and everything he has planned. Getting ready to turn 70 years old, still with clearly lots of plans and great stuff ahead. So here's Jeff. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. How's it going?
It's going very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first, I want to just dive into your role or roles here at the Medical Center. Executive Director, Animal Resource, Veterinarian, Professor in the Department of Comparative Medicine, Professor of Environmental Medicine. How did all of this start? Does it come from a love of animals, a love for the environment? How did this all start?
Well, it started with a 25-year-old from Ohio, me, arriving in Rochester, New York, beginning a residency training program. So the residency training program was for graduate veterinarians, then interested in working with research medicine, comparative medicine, we call it now, as well as working at the Seneca Park Zoo. So I was able to blend two of my very strong interests in science, working with exotic animals, wildlife, as well as research animals. And ever since then, I've been really connecting those dots in ways inside the university and outside. So my current job is attending veterinarian. So I'm the university's veterinarian across both campuses, and I oversee the research program for the university. A lot of that has to do with compliance, regulations, communications, being a face for the university to the community. But more importantly, it's fostering exemplary research. Mm-hmm. We have been advancing medical miracles here, and in great part, it's because of the animal research that happens here. So we have a staff of veterinarians and veterinary technicians and animal care staff that take care of, well, it's about 80,000 animals, wow. Mostly mice, a lot of fish, and we have accomplished a tremendous amount inside the university. Now, we're also working with animals outside the university. So one of my passions is looking at animals as biomonitors. This is wildlife, as biomonitors or bioindicators of environmental health. And it's sort of like the canary in the coal mine, but these are wildlife that, for example, our primary program is with lake sturgeon, which is a long-lived fish, 150 years, and reintroducing those fish to the Genesee River, which has a long history of legacy pollutants from prior industry. The pollution has stopped, and so it's a big project reintroducing these sturgeon that disappeared, and we reintroduced them as babies. And the cool part is we can look at them longitudinally, just like looking at a cohort of humans, and look as they age what kind of health patterns they have, and very importantly, what kind of chemical contaminants they may face. So I had a $300,000 EPA grant just looking at that question, and we learned a tremendous amount. And in the end, it was really good news. The Genesee River is healthier than we ever thought, and now we have these 20-year-old sturgeon starting at 4 inches, and now they're 6 feet, spawning their own babies for 3 years. So the river is healthy water, healthy people, healthy community. So it really is both inside the University of Rochester and outside promoting human health and ecosystem health.
And you've also that entire time been working at the Seneca Park Zoo. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've been directing their conservation and research program. I did that for 35 years. And it's really cool because I was able to connect the zoo with the medical center. And one big project that we were working on in collaboration, it's all about multidisciplinary approaches to promoting ecosystem health, is to invite physicians to join me going to Borneo. My goal is to save orangutans, which are critically endangered. Why are they endangered? Well, we have illegal logging and the forest is disappearing. Why is the forest disappearing? Well, we learned that I've been working with an NGO called Health in Harmony, and we've learned that the best way to approach problem solving in a community is radical listening. Listen to the community for their own solutions. And so in Borneo, we learned that if the villagers had access to healthcare and had alternative sustainable livelihoods, they could stop logging tomorrow. And so we've been working there for 20 years as well. And we've saved 2,500 orangutans from extinction, saved the forest. And guess what? We've opened up a hospital run by Indonesians, but we have mentors, U of R physicians that have joined me there. I'll run off, and I'm not handling orangutans, I'm working with goats. So I'm working with healthy goats that can generate revenue for our marginalized widows in the community. So I've been able to take that kind of approach and use it in Rochester as well, listening to local communities that are marginalized, that are facing health problems in an ever-degrading environment.
Yeah, when we first spoke, you talked a lot about, connecting the dots between human health, animal health, ecosystem health, and this kind of is exactly what you meant by that.
Yeah, human health and animal health are bounded to ecosystem health. We're all in it together. And so as I started my work at the University of Rochester and Seneca Park Zoo, I was realizing more and more of those connections. And I decided I believe I want to get a degree in public health. So again, it's like bridging between physicians and veterinarians. And so I earned a master's degree in public health in 1995. I had amazing support. I was the first veterinarian to ever go through the program.
Okay.
They really didn't know what to do with me. A lot of it was about politics and policy and health administration, not about what I could offer a program, which is what role do animals play in human health? And so Nancy Bennett, was an advisor of mine. Bill Barker, who was an epidemiologist, was my primary advisor there. They were both so nimble. So Nancy then was with the Department of Health. She was the deputy director there. And Bill was an epidemiologist here at the U of R. And so we realized that there was an unmet health need in Rochester. Actually, it was in all of upstate New York. Actually, it was in the eastern seaboard of the United States. What is it? Rabies. I mean, rabies is a disease that we eradicated in the United States. Then all of a sudden, in 1985 or so, we were realizing more people being treated for rabies. And it was because there was this raccoon, rabies epizootic, that was going from the eastern seaboard, marching like an epizootic across the United States. This was a very unusual experience because rabies in raccoons wasn't really heard of here. What happened? Well, some hunters decided to move raccoons from Florida up to Virginia to restock hunting game in into a forest. And so, and it happened to move rabies with the raccoons. So now we have this naive population of raccoons that are now marching across the eastern seaboard. And this became an international problem. So Nancy Bennett realized, as well as Bill Barker, that the public health funds were being decimated by families having subsidized treatment for rabies exposure. And no one's ever heard of raccoons playing a role in rabies, and the typical exposure is a bite.
Yes.
So with their guidance, they opened up all the public health departments across our 4 counties, Monroe, Wayne, Cayuga, and beyond. And so we had 2 urban and 2 rural counties. I went into the Department of Health and explored their records and looked at risk factors. I had 1,100 people that were being treated for rabies,
Oh my gosh.
just over a 2-year period. That was shocking. So we learned that it was a very non-traditional exposure. It was really awesome. And Nana Bennett and I had kind of a dog and pony show that we took out on the road because the non-traditional exposure was not a bite from a raccoon. It was when the golden retriever went in the backyard, entangled with the raccoon, and then the dog came back in, raccoon scurried off. Maybe it was rabbit, who knows? But all the kids are petting the dog, like, how are you? How are you? And, it just so happens as, you pet your dog, then we touch our face and our lips way more than we'd ever guess. So they were petting their dog, wet hands, mouth, eyes. So there was this theoretical exposure of saliva into the kids and their mucous membranes, which no family, no parents want to hear someone like me saying, well, it's a theoretical risk.
Yeah.
Because there's no survival of rabies. So we had all this treatment. So the campaign was to really educate the community about how to avoid that interaction with your pet and your raccoon. So I got my degree in public health, and then onward I went, really bridging more what I would consider gaps between human medicine and veterinary medicine.
So I want to talk about Nana Bennett for a minute. You mentioned her. She, as we record this, recently retired from the medical center. But just a few things about her. Founder of our Center for Community Health and Prevention, leader in the COVID community response, pioneer of community health improvement, also heavily involved in the launch of our Clinical and Translational Science Institute, or CTSI, as most folks listening might know it. Can you just talk about what it was like, having her as an advisor, a mentor, just being able to work with somebody like her for so long?
Well, she really is a pioneer, and she was a foundation of me moving forward, working with physicians and epidemiologists. She has an inquisitive approach, is super nimble about moving in different directions, recognizing we all face challenges, and helped me take a very rational and practical approach to answering the questions that were posed. We've interacted many times since then. As I graduated, I gave her a mug with a big raccoon face on it. She invited me to run the public health grand rounds recently, describing my work in Borneo. So meeting her was pivotal for me to move forward, especially in the medical community. Subsequent to that, I was appointed to the Board of Health for Monroe County, the first veterinarian to ever be appointed to the Board of Health. I served on that for probably 10 years and rotated off, looking at all kinds of situations that Nana would see or that the community would see, everything from what are we going to do with all these geese that are pooping everywhere? And so I was asked, what is the big health risk there? And honestly, the big health risk there is slipping, not necessarily a zoonotic disease, but having a veterinarian being able to add more information about that human-animal interaction with Nana's assistance to launch me into the healthcare world was wonderful. So we've learned that 75% of the emerging infectious diseases in the world involve an animal. 75%. It used to be 65%. I think we've just been looking more, and COVID is a good example, as well as SARS, a lot of RNA viruses that have pandemic potential. Last year, I went to Madagascar, working on a project looking for RNA viruses with pandemic potential at the source. So I was in Malagasy communities, listening to them. Also, with a team of physicians and veterinarians, we were taking blood and saliva samples on villagers who happened to be eating bats and lemurs and rats. And so I was the veterinarian taking samples from the lemurs, the bats, and the rats on a team of veterinarians. And then we had physicians doing the same with the villagers, trying to identify any kind of risk, because bats are famous for transmitting pretty contagious viruses to people that could go pandemic as well. So all of that started with my MPH, really rabies in people and farmers and families in Monroe County, then moving on all the way to Madagascar.
I was going to say, this job has literally taken you all over the world. When you were at Ohio State, going into the veterinary world, could you have pictured that it would take you places like that? Or, I mean, is this kind of, did you even have like a clue that this was in the realm of possibilities back then?
I had no clue. It's mind-blowing, really, when I look back from 1982 and the opportunities that have been afforded me through the U of R. I have had opportunities to move in different directions with CDC and other possibilities. And I've always been able to share with leadership here. You know, one of my best mentors and colleagues is Steve Dewhurst. He has sent me off in so many different directions, or supported my hopes and goals for this interconnectedness. And there was a possibility of me moving onward to do more of this sort of global health impact. And I was encouraged by the president of the university as well as Steve to, one of the pillars of the U of R is community revitalization. And community is the globe. So do your work in Madagascar, do your work in Borneo, and let's bring it back home too. So by bringing it back home, that's when I started working with marginalized community members, especially the Rochester's refugee community, and have found an abundance of funding through the EPA to further public health projects in our local community. Zip code 14613 is my go-to now as far as the community I've been working with now for about 4 years.
I want to talk about that community now and the Genesee River that our trainees and faculty all know so very well. And you mentioned before we started talking, you know, for a long time, the area river was sort of known as a toxic hotspot, and there is something that's sort of a big deal being recognized in October of this year. It's September as we record this, so next month. Can you talk a little bit about that, because it's a big step that's been 40 years in the making for the community, for the Genesee River?
Yeah, this is huge for Rochester. It's huge for the Great Lakes. So across the Great Lakes, the International Joint Commission and all of the state health departments and the EPA identified about 55 cities that had a long history of industrial pollution all across the Great Lakes. And they identified problems with the community, be it beach closures, to fish tumors, to fish not being able to survive, to smells, to tainted fish. And so there were 14 what we call beneficial use impairments. These are 14 problems. That's the maximum number of problems that any city could face. And our job then was to remediate the environment, to correct everything that would bring us back to at least the general health of Lake Ontario. We were overrepresented in a lot of problems. And indeed, yes, it's taken 40 years. I was appointed to the Remedial Action Committee through the Department of Health to work on addressing these beneficial use impairments. So the only veterinarian on the committee, and you know, we're talking all about human health. But didn't we spend a fair amount of time trying to determine what animal could tell us that the river is healthier? For a while there, we were considering bald eagles. And we thought, this was 20 years ago, we thought, well, they probably aren't going to come back. Well, now look, they have. So we ended up selecting with the USGS, U.S. Geological Survey, and another one of my heroes who was Dawn Dittman. She's an aquatic ecologist, a PhD, through the USGS. And she's actually got an adjunct appointment here in my department. But she and I worked on a project to, bit of an experiment to introduce baby sturgeon, 4-inch sturgeon that were hatchery reared because they disappeared from the Genesee River in the 50s. And so it was a bit of an experiment. It was all part of evidence that the river is healthier. You know, and fast forward 20 years, we've got now fish that are spawning and that are thriving, that are super healthy in our Genesee River. Now, I'm not saying the river is free of chemical contaminants. These are persistent chemical contaminants that last forever. But what's happening, as long as we don't dredge in certain areas, we already have a navigation channel that gets dredged often in the lower 6 miles of the river, the chemical contaminants are being encapsulated by a sediment. We have a high sediment river. And the pollution stopped in the 70s. So really Mother Nature is so resilient. She's cleaning up the river as long as we give her an opportunity to do so. We reintroduced the sturgeon. We've learned so much from these sturgeon. We've learned about emerging chemical contaminants. They're a bit of a sponge. You can take blood samples from them just like you can a person, and you can put them back in the river. And so we've been monitoring about 7,000 sturgeon that we've released in the Genesee River over the last 20 years. And now next month, we are going to be delisted as an area of concern. So all 14 of those beneficial use impairments we've addressed. It was we multidisciplinary, physicians, epidemiologists, environmentalists, soil scientists, fishermen, the community, NGOs, the Audubon Society. We've all been together working on this goal. So yes, indeed, of the 52 or so that are remaining, we're probably in the top 5 that have been delisted. So there are many other cities that are working on this. It's a huge accomplishment, took so long. And so, yeah, we're going to, in October, have a press conference, celebrate this, let the community be so proud. We want people to be stewards of the watershed. I know when I first came here in 82, a Rochesterian wouldn't really consider even dipping their toe in the Genesee River.
No.
And it's very different now. If you go down to the Genesee River now, you'll see we have canoe launches, kayak launches. And so the city government and the county have really supported giving more people access to the river, fishing as well. And so it's a much healthier environment for the people, for the community, and it's all being celebrated in the month of October.
I love it. And that made me think of patience. Something that comes up so often with our trainees, folks that are doing research, or folks that have done research for a long time giving advice to trainees. A lot of them say, you have to be patient because you can't, you're not going to see results in an hour. You're not going to see results tomorrow, the next week. Could be years down the road, got lots of failures along the way. How do you, stay persistent? Is that something that has it taken a lot of patience, I'm guessing, to kind of stay with this, or how do you just kind of stay persistent with it all when it potential is decades down the road that you're going to see an impact?
So we're all part of the solution, and it is going to take decades. I mean, I learned from the sturgeon; they live 150 years. So we have children participating in our sturgeon release program, and I look at their families, I look in their eyes at their parents, and we all recognize this work is going to span generations of scientists. How lucky are we that it's only taken 20 years?
Right.
My goodness. And these sturgeon that we're working with, they have another 100 years ahead of them to show us how our environment is ever increasingly healthy. So I feel like I have a purpose to further this kind of program that does take time. And and there's a huge return on that investment because we can see others taking over those responsibilities as scientists and epidemiologists move through their careers.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to ask before we wrap up, if there's another Masters of Public Health trainee listening in, or just to anyone in graduate school that's, kind of staring down at the end of their graduate school tenure and thinking about what they want to do. Is there any grad school career advice that you like to pass along to folks like that?
I sure would. And it starts with the undergraduates. So I'm the pre-veterinary advisor for the U of R. And I have a very non-traditional career, as we've touched on in different ways. So my message to all of them, be they an undergrad, be they a graduate student, is to follow your passion. Really follow a career pathway that you lose track of time. I mean, even with this brief interview, we've lost track of time of the different topics. So really, I encourage everyone to follow their passion, make an informed decision about the direction they want to take, gain experience, recognize if you have to pivot, you have to pivot. So be nimble there, but create a future pathway from a career perspective that you love. And I have succeeded that in great part because of the support I get at the U of R. It's amazing to me that, and my colleagues around the world who are veterinarians, look at my career pathway here at the U of R as very unusual. In fact, I'm a keynote speaker at a national conference in October about such a career pathway, such a novel, non-traditional career that others can hopefully replicate, because the impact that we can have, especially working with others and bringing our unique knowledge, is greater than working alone.
Absolutely. Anything else we didn't touch on that you want to pass along?
I want to encourage everyone to be optimistic. There's hope. We live in a community where sometimes we forget about hope. And hope is not a strategy, but it can sure motivate you. And so let's move forward with promoting a healthy environment, recognizing the interconnectedness between humans, animals, and the environment, ecosystem health. We're all part of this together with the animals and the environment, and together we can have tremendous impact and healthy lives for all.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on the upcoming, just sort of the culmination of all the work that's gone into the local community and the delisting. We're excited to see that. I know it takes a village, and you're a small part of that. But congratulations, and thank you so much for the time.
Well, it's far from over.
Of course.
So I'm approaching 70 years old, and next year I have a Fulbright Award.
Okay.
So I'll be teaching at Bogor University, which is outside of Jakarta. They have a veterinary school, a medical school, agriculture, soil sciences, all of it. And our laboratory is Borneo. So I'll be developing a curriculum. It's a planetary health curriculum promoting a healthy planet, but working in Borneo as our laboratory.
And how long will you be there?
So I'll be there I'm looking at a year.
Okay.
The award is only for 6 weeks.
Okay.
But I'm kind of at a pivotal time in my career right now where I might spend more time there. I've already been working there for 20 years and giving lectures. And now it's an opportunity to pull more Indonesians in to working towards solutions to save all the wildlife in Borneo.
Yes.
There's a tremendous need there because that's the only place orangutans live. And we've already demonstrated by example a proof of concept. We can save them. And in Borneo, we can reverse infant mortality. So we were able to reverse infant mortality by 70% just in 20 years. So again, it's the long haul.
Yes.
But it requires a community to achieve that. And it's sustainable. That's the cool part too. These are all community-generated solutions, so they're all sustainable.
Yes. It's not like once you leave, it stops.
No, you don't want someone like me parachuting in and then leaving and everything falls apart.
Yes.
That's where the community-led solutions really make a difference.
That's great. Well, best of luck with all of that, and you look great for almost 70.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Next Step podcast. If you liked what you heard, please share with other members of the University of Rochester community or anyone you think could benefit from these career stories. And we wish you nothing but the best in your own career journey. Until next time.